What you just saw now are moments of great tension, where explosions light up the night sky of Moscow like fireworks. Streaks of light cut through the darkness in the city of Zelenograd, just 37 kilometers from the Kremlin. Deafening sounds could be heard throughout the early morning hours. This is just fucking insane. Air defense systems, such as the Pantsir and S-400, fired at swarms of Ukrainian drones. Glowing debris fell from the sky, causing numerous fires. This is not a scene from a war movie. This really happened in the early hours of July 20th, 2025, when Ukraine brought the war directly to the Russian capital. Now, this wasn't the first time Ukraine attacked Moscow, but this time it was different. They had never attacked with this scale and sophistication. What happened in the early hours of July 20th represents an attempt at a brutal escalation in Ukraine's ability to strike at the heart of Russia. But how is this possible? How did Ukraine manage to launch attacks capable of penetrating Russia's most protected defenses? The answer will shock you. The attack began at 6 in the evening local time on July 20th, but it wasn't just a simple bombing. It was a complex military operation that extended into the early morning, hitting at least 7 districts of Moscow simultaneously. The mayor of the Russian capital, Sergei Sobyanin, admitted that at least 21 Ukrainian drones targeted his city, but the official Russian numbers don't match. The Russian Ministry of Defense, in turn, claimed to have shot down 93 drones during the night, 19 of them over the Moscow region. They claim that only 2 managed to get past the defenses. Now, here we come to an important detail. Look, if only 2 drones penetrated the defenses, why were cars burning in the streets? Why were residential buildings damaged? Because all 4 major airports in Moscow were closed simultaneously. The truth is that Ukraine employed a devastatingly clever tactic. They call it a cascade of false routes. Imagine a coordinated swarm where some drones are decoys, designed to confuse and saturate the Russian radar systems. Each S-400 or Pantsir missile fired at a fake drone is one less missile to intercept the real drones carrying explosives. And here's the genius of the Ukrainian strategy. A Ukrainian drone costs a few $1,000s to produce. A Russian interceptor missile costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. Ukraine has turned the war into a mathematical equation where Putin always loses. They can launch 100 drones for the cost of a single Russian missile. It's David versus Goliath, but this time David has swarms of drones. Eyewitnesses reported terrifying scenes. Drones flying dangerously close, just above the rooftops of buildings. Residents of the Kuntsevo and Novoseltsy districts saw plumes of smoke rising above the houses. Windows shattered in the Barvika district. The attack was real, it was massive, and it was devastatingly effective. But where were Moscow's famous defenses? Russia has always been proud of them. And in fact, its military mobilized the main air defense batteries. Systems like the Pantsir S-1 and the S-400 were used, operating in an integrated network. For the first time in the capital, they implemented pulsed radio jamming, a technology that tries to disconnect drones from their operators through radio signals, as well as dedicated drone interceptors. Despite all this military technology, the defenses failed. And that brings us to a disturbing question. If Moscow, with its S-400 systems and all its military technology, can be penetrated, what city in the world is truly safe? Now, the real impact of the attack goes far beyond the physical damage. Do you want to know what really scared the Kremlin? The economic impact. It was immediate and devastating. For the first time since April 2024, all 4 major airports in Moscow closed simultaneously. Sheremetyevo, Vnukovo, Domodedovo, and Zhukovsky. More than 1,000 flights were canceled or delayed. 134 planes were diverted to other cities. Tens of thousands of passengers were stranded in the terminals for hours. The numbers are impressive, but they only scratch the surface of the true Ukrainian victory. Since January 2025, Ukrainian attacks have forced 217 Russian airport closures. This costs Russia millions of dollars every month, but the July attack marked a brutal escalation. Moscow lost 40% of its typical nightly revenue in a single night. Ukraine discovered something brilliant. They don't need to destroy a target to be effective. The mere presence of a drone in the airspace triggers the carpet plan, a mandatory airspace closure for security reasons. A single low-cost drone doesn't even need to hit a target. Its detection is enough to trigger a response that costs the Russian economy millions. But the real blow was actually psychological. A resident of Kuntsevo said something that summed up the situation well. There was a real feeling that the city was no longer protected. Before we thought it was something in Kharkiv, in Kyiv, but now it's here at my doorstep. I gathered the kids, and we sat under the bed. And this insecurity can even be measured. Surveys from the Levada Center, one of the main opinion research institutes in Russia, show that 66% of Muscovites feel stressed about the war. 35% are considering leaving the city. As you can see, Putin didn't just lose drones that night, he lost the trust of his people. And this can be confirmed by the Kremlin's desperate response. It revealed the real panic. The Russian prosecutor's office issued severe warnings against posts that incited panic on social media. To give you an idea, journalists were instructed to publish only verified data, which could only come from the same Ministry of Defense that, in turn, released contradictory and proven false numbers. Apps like Telegram, Instagram, and X were flooded with videos of the scene, creating a popular narrative that the authorities couldn't control. Now, do you want to know what was the strangest thing about this story? The silence from the highest levels of the Kremlin. After all, if the attack had been as unsuccessful as they claimed, there would be no need to threaten citizens for sharing videos of fires, right? But there's something even more explosive about this attack. The timing wasn't just a coincidence. Just 5 days before the attack, Donald Trump had given Putin a 50-day ultimatum for a peace deal. But there's another important detail here. Trump also supposedly warned Ukraine not to attack in Moscow, and Ukraine attacked anyway. With this, the Ukrainians seem to signal that, although they depend on Western support, they won't be just a pawn in negotiations between great powers. They seem to be putting their entire relationship with their biggest supporter at risk to send a clear message. Ukraine will fight for its own terms, not for terms imposed by others. And the context makes this decision even bolder. Look, Putin had massively escalated his drone war against Ukrainian cities. The numbers are frightening. From 1,100 drones in 3 months up to August 2024 to more than 4,000, just in May 2025. In June, these attacks killed 232 Ukrainian civilians and injured another 1,300. Faced with this carnage, Ukraine decided to respond in kind. The attack on Moscow was a direct retaliation. If Putin would terrorize Ukrainian cities, Kiev would bring the war to the heart of Russia and Ukraine. Well, they made it clear that this is just the beginning. A source from the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense was prophetic, saying, "This is just the beginning. The old doctrines no longer work. Drones are changing the global architecture of war." Now, any metropolis can no longer remain indifferent. And as you may have noticed, this change is already happening. The attack on Moscow was not just tactical. It was transformational. It showed that no city, no matter how well defended, is safe from swarms of low-cost drones. We are facing one of the greatest transformations in what we know about war. A time where distance offers no safety, where capitals can be attacked by adversaries who don't even have traditional air forces, where swarms of low-cost drones can overcome the most sophisticated defense systems on the planet. Putin now faces an impossible choice: escalate the war even further while losing the support of most Russians, or accept that his special military operation has turned into something that brought the war directly home. As you can see, the war in Ukraine has become the world's main laboratory for the future of conflicts. And Putin now faces a problem that has no solution. He needs to invest billions in new anti-drone technologies, better radars, electronic warfare, and directed energy weapons. Meanwhile, Ukraine keeps innovating, spending much less money. It's an arms race that's hard to sustain for a long time. Every airport closure, every intercepted drone, every missile fired bleeds the Russian military budget. And Ukraine? Well, it seems determined to keep sending its cheap drones indefinitely. And you, what do you think about this new reality of modern warfare? Leave your opinion in the comments. If you found this content useful, subscribe to the channel and share this video. See you next time.